would definitely be worthwhile to do another dedicated workshop on this topic, trying to simplify things, because it's true that the law often says there are lots of possibilities, there are many things you can do, but when it comes to the process, when you're going through the process of setting up, you want to have some reference points, some markers, so maybe we'll focus more on those aspects. In any case, thank you very much for this presentation.
Thank you. And just on that point, within the firm, it's something I really value a lot, the dynamic approach to law. That's what it's about. It's also about making legal topics more accessible and popularizing legal aspects. So I completely understand your comment, and I think it just takes time. You really do need to dedicate time to this issue.
Thank you very much for your time.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much. We'll continue with the theme of setting up, focusing now on the topic of marketing. We wanted to provide a few reference points, and for that we've invited a market gardener from the network in Normandy, Thibault Dupont, who runs the Gobettes farm with his wife Elsa. So, well, I'll hand it over to Thibault to present some key points and guidelines for successful marketing at the start of a market gardening business. Hello, Thibault.
Hi, everyone. Hello, Vincent. I've prepared a little PowerPoint here about how to set up an AMAP. Can you see it? Because I don't have any feedback on my screen.
I can clearly see it now, so we are definitely good to proceed with everything.
Okay.
What's surprising is that we can't see your camera. It might be a good idea to turn it on.
Absolutely.
Because then we'll see both, actually. There you go. Great. You can go ahead.
Hi, it's good. So I prepared a short business presentation, and above all, I was asked to work on how to create an AMAP and the advantages and arguments for AMAPs. We set up in 2018 with Elsa on pastures that are about 5.5 hectares. We live on the farm. We've been practicing MSV since the beginning. We don't grow any hybrids, and we're self-sufficient for seedlings. And we grow about 80 varieties of vegetables and strawberries. And this year we've planted 200 fruit trees, and we're setting up a workshop with 50 laying hens. As for marketing, our sales are split between an AMAP, 2 restaurants, 3 biocoops, and on-farm sales on Saturdays. So all of that allows us to sell 100% of our vegetables within a radius of about 15 kilometers. So we only do direct sales. And that allowed us to achieve a turnover of 72,000 euros in 2020. So why create an AMAP? When we initially started out, we really wanted to sell a significant and substantial part of our fresh, high-quality vegetables locally, right here in our community. And so we thought that an AMAP would allow us to start a kind of human adventure around the farm, to create a community around the farm, which could be interesting. And at the same time, we thought it was quite reassuring in terms of marketing, because it allows you to secure, when you're just starting out and have never produced vegetables before, part of your income for the whole year, and to guarantee a portion of your sales. Because with an AMAP, it's a subscription for a produce basket. So people sign up for several months at a time. And so, well, that's a guarantee that's reassuring when you're starting out. How did we go about it? We organized a public meeting in the village of 1,200 inhabitants where we live. To announce this public meeting, well, we made posts on social media and put up posters at local shops. We even put flyers in the mailboxes of neighboring villages. And as a result, we held a public meeting where there were more than 100 people. Of course, not everyone subscribed to the AMAP, but for future sales, which were broader with on-farm sales, it allowed us to get our name out there and to build a customer base with phone numbers and addresses, which was quite significant. And so after this public meeting, the people who were interested in the subscription concept were invited to visit the farm 2 months later. And from there, they signed up. And during these farm visits, we set up a committee with people who were motivated to help manage the AMAP, with the goal of handling registrations, being present during the distribution of the baskets, and also working on developing the AMAP so that eventually it wouldn't just be vegetables, but there would be other products, other market garden products, other agricultural products that people could find there. So today, and this really hasn't changed since the beginning, even though when you start an AMAP, there's a lot of turnover. at each re-enrollment, about 15 to 20% of people don't renew their subscription. That doesn't necessarily mean they're leaving the farm, but it does mean they're leaving the vegetable offerings we have at the farm. They just don't come to buy them as part of the basket system anymore. So right now, we have 40 baskets at 15 euros each over 46 weeks. We stop around mid-December at the start of the Christmas holidays, and we start up again at the end of January. And with the AMAP baskets, that allows us to make about 25% of our revenue. The advantages of creating an AMAP are that it helps you get your name out there. Because at the beginning, we started the AMAP even though we didn't have any vegetables to sell yet. But it allowed us to make the project known to local people and really brought people together around our project, because those who subscribed to the AMAP and came to visit the farm right at the start when it was created, well, they stayed loyal and they were the ones who started talking about us to their friends and family. So much so that when we started selling vegetables outside of the AMAP, we already had plenty of people who knew us and were interested in coming to buy directly at the farm. And that's interesting too, because it's a good gateway to local consumption. We have quite a few people who discovered the AMAP and who didn't really eat locally, who basically shopped at the supermarket, but who I think, well, who wouldn't necessarily have come to buy at the farm. And so they started signing up for the AMAP. And so it allows you to have baskets for a family of 4 that aren't too big either, for people who don't necessarily eat a lot of vegetables yet or who want to start cooking a bit. So we have a lot of people who subscribe to the AMAP, stay for 6 months, and then start coming on Saturdays to buy directly at the farm. So this helps us find new customers and build their loyalty. And as for the drawbacks, well, it does take quite a bit of time to follow up with people for registration and to manage the signups. And the small issue we have is that there are quite a few people, well, not that many, but out of 40, there are always 2 or 3 people who forget to come pick up their basket. So we have to call them, wait for them, they're late and everything. And that takes a bit of time. Advice for setting up an AMAP so that it works well when you start out is that when you're in a rural area, it's not the same as when you're in the city. I have colleagues, friends who are market gardeners with AMAPs in the city, and they really stick to the AMAP principle in the strict sense of the term. That is, they arrive, they drop off the quantities needed to make X baskets in crates, and it's the AMAP volunteers who put the baskets together, make sure everyone comes to pick up their baskets, call people when someone forgets, and so on. In rural areas, I find it's a bit more complicated to set up a system like that. So for us, for example, we stay there for the entire distribution, because the distribution takes place at the farm and we're there available until the end. And if someone forgets their basket, we're the ones who take care of it. And we still haven't managed to fully delegate that to a team of volunteers. Another important point when starting out is that people are often a bit afraid to subscribe. They're worried about wasting vegetables, about having things come up, or weeks when they're on vacation and can't be there. So as a result, we've set up a joker system. Also, we have 2 subscription periods during the year. We have one period that runs from the end of January to mid-May, and another that goes from mid-May to the end of December. And why do we have a period that ends in mid-May? Because that's when we reopen on farm sales, since we start to have more variety and more products. So as a result, there are people who subscribe just for the first period and then stop. And from mid-May to mid-December, they go back to the traditional on-farm sales. And what's important during these different periods is to open up to offer people the option not to come. So for example, in the second period from mid-May to mid-December, there are a little over 30 weeks, and we offer the possibility to take 5 jokers. So that means, let's say there are 30 weeks, people sign up for 25 weeks. And for the 5 weeks when they can't come because they have other commitments or they're on vacation, they just have to let us know the day before we prepare the baskets. And actually, at first, we hadn't really thought about setting up this system, and it really reassures people to be able to have these jokers. So don't hesitate to offer 5 or even more if there's demand. It makes people feel more comfortable. Afterwards, it doesn't necessarily mean they'll use all their jokers, because usually in the last 2 weeks of December, people who took jokers just to feel reassured end up adding more baskets and taking them anyway. Another thing that's pretty good is organizing farm visits, because the people who sign up for the AMAP are people who are, supportive, since they choose not to choose their vegetables. They choose to support us by subscribing for the whole year. And so it's really good to take some time with them to explain how and why we produce. It helps them understand sometimes the lack of variety, in quotes, during certain periods. It allows them to understand why tomatoes only arrive in mid-July, because it shows them that in April and May, we don't plant tomatoes too early, so they can have as many early vegetables as possible. So that's pretty nice, really. And the last piece of advice is really to vary the vegetables, because for us, when we started out, we got a lot of people who had been in AMAPs that existed around us before we arrived, which had kind of declined. And really the negative point that people who had trouble as a result wanting to sign up again for something like this brought up was really the lack of vegetable variety, having the same kind of cabbage for 8 weeks in a row during winter, or sometimes it was also cucumbers, because cucumbers grow well, and so there are fewer other vegetables and so on. So that's really a key to success for keeping people for a long time, having as much variety in the vegetables as possible.
Specifically, there's a quick question from Manu who asks, what is the variety of vegetables? How many different types of vegetables should there be in a basket for it to be considered a good one?
We guarantee the baskets cost $15, and we guarantee that there are at least 5 to 6 different vegetables. So in summer, we reduce the quantities to include a bit more of everything. And in winter, generally right now, we have a bunch of herbs, a bag of purslane or Asian greens, leeks and potatoes. And then there are different kinds of cabbages, purple broccoli that come around, and storage beets. And right now, it's a bit of a tricky period. But starting in early May, there will be greenhouse-grown zucchinis and Asian cabbages coming back. And from then on, we get more variety again. The hardest part is bridging the gap between now and the arrival of the first early vegetables.
What's the average weight of a basket? That's a good question too.
That's hard to say. In fact, that's a question a lot of people who want to subscribe ask. How many kilos will we get for 15 euros? It doesn't really make sense to think about it that way, because in winter, we'll have bags of purslane, bags of spinach, and in the fall, we'll have potatoes and squash. So for the same price, the weight is different.
Very well, thank you very much. Is that good for you? Yes, Thibault?
Yes, that's fine for me. This afternoon, if there are any other questions, I believe we have a more general workshop on marketing that will be open for discussion.
That's the very important workshop that will indeed take place this afternoon at precisely 4 p.m. Registration is already closed. You will find the video that goes into more detail about the system and the discussions related to the topic of marketing. We'll actually continue with the topic of marketing with the next speaker, since we realize that many market gardeners end up selling directly to specialty stores, organic shops like BioCop, Viclair, etc., or sometimes even to supermarkets, because they are very interested in local fresh products. And this raises a whole set of questions about what the quality of the products should be, what should